The first sign that something was wrong wasn't the screams. In a world where the dead never stopped moaning, where every ruined street echoed with the slow drag of rotting feet, the sudden absence of sound meant only one thing. Everything that should have been here had run. Rick Grimes stood on the Alexandria watchtower at dawn, binoculars trained on the interstate where a herd of 3,000 walkers had been drifting east for 6 days. Standard migration pattern. They'd tracked it, mapped it, planned supply runs around it. Now, empty road. Not one walker, not one corpse, just silence that felt like pressure against his eardrums. "Daryl," Rick's voice carried across the platform. "You seeing this?" Daryl Dixon lowered his own binoculars, crossbow already in hand. 15 years into the apocalypse had taught him that empty roads were more dangerous than full ones. Herd don't just disappear. 3,000 walkers leave traces, blood, drag marks. Means something. "There's something," Rick said, pointing. "Look at the median, 20 yards past the overpass." Daryl focused his binoculars. In the dirt separating lanes, tracks. Deep gouges in earth that rain should have washed away, but hadn't. Parallel grooves, each one 8 inches wide, running perpendicular to the road before vanishing into the tree line. "That ain't Walker," Daryl muttered. "That ain't human either." Below, Alexandria's gates creaked open. Michonne emerged, katana strapped across her back, leading a patrol of 4. She looked up at the tower. "Rick, we've got a problem." "We've got several," Rick called down. "What's yours?" "The western perimeter traps. Something triggered all of them. But there's no bodies, no blood, no walkers." She paused. "Just holes." "Holes?" "In the ground, like something burrowed out from underneath." Michonne's voice carried the controlled tension of someone who'd seen too much to dismiss anomalies. "Rick, these holes are fresh, dug last night, and they're all leading toward the community." Rick and Daryl exchanged glances that didn't require words. 15 years of survival had created a language of looks. This is new. New is dangerous. Dangerous means we adapt or die. "I'm coming down," Rick said. "Daryl, get Eugene on long-range scans. I want to know if any other settlements are reporting." A scream cut through the morning air. Not from Alexandria, from beyond the walls, east side, where the herd should have been. The scream lasted 4 seconds, then stopped with mechanical abruptness, not fading, not dying into silence, just terminated. "That was human," Michonne said, her hand already on her katana. "That was bait," Daryl corrected, but he was already moving toward the ladder. Rick grabbed the radio. "All stations. This is Rick. Lock down the community. No one goes beyond the walls until we know what we're dealing with. Gabriel, get everyone inside the church. Aaron, I secure the children in the..." The radio crackled, Eugene's voice higher pitched than usual. "Rick, you need to see this. Right now. I've got visual on the eastern perimeter camera, and it's anatomically improbable, but the evidence is..." "Eugene, plain English. There's a walker on the ground, but Rick..." Eugene's breath caught. "It's been opened from the inside." The walker lay 50 yards beyond Alexandria's eastern wall, visible through the chain-link fence that had kept the community safe for a decade. Rick, Michonne, and Daryl approached with weapons drawn, flanked by 6 others: Aaron, Rosita, Gabriel, Magna, Kelly, and Connie. Experienced fighters, people who'd survived the governor, Terminus, the saviors, the whisperers. People who didn't scare easily. They scared now. The walker, or what remained of it, lay face down in mud. Its torso had been torn open from within. Ribs splayed outward like flower petals made of bone. The spine was visible, snapped cleanly in two places. But the damage wasn't from teeth or claws working from outside. Something had erupted from the walker's chest cavity. "Walkers don't do that to each other," Rosita said quietly, her rifle trained on the tree line. "Even the freshly turned ones, they bite, they tear, but they don't." She gestured at the anatomical impossibility before them. They don't explode from the inside." Michonne circled the corpse, katana ready. "There's no blood trail leading away. Whatever came out of this thing, it didn't bleed." "It didn't walk either," Daryl added, crouching near the body. His tracker's eyes read the ground like text. "See these marks? Drag patterns. Whatever this was, it pulled itself. Fast, recent, mud still wet from body heat." Rick studied the torn chest cavity. The walker's organs were gone, not eaten, but absent, as if something had grown inside the body cavity and consumed everything to fuel its development. He'd seen a lot of horror in 15 years, seen people eaten alive, seen children turn, seen communities burn. He'd never seen anything that used the dead like this. "Eugene," Rick spoke into his radio, "you said there were cameras. Pull footage from last night. I want to know what we're looking at." "Already reviewing," Eugene replied, his voice tight with tension that Rick recognized as Eugene fighting panic through technical focus. Timestamp shows activity at 0347 hours. Camera 14 caught movement, but Rick, the entity's physiology is inconsistent with known. "Show me." 5 minutes later, they were in Eugene's monitoring station, a converted garage filled with salvaged equipment that kept Alexandria's security systems functional. Eugene pulled up grainy night vision footage. The walker appeared on screen at 3:47 a.m., shambling with standard animated corpse gait. Then it stopped. Not the usual walker pause. They didn't have intentional pauses. This was different. The walker stood perfectly still for 11 seconds. Then it collapsed. For 6 seconds, nothing. Just a corpse on the ground. Then the corpse began to convulse. Violent spasms that didn't match walker movement. The torso bulged. The ribs cracked, audible even on the degraded audio, and something emerged. The footage quality made details difficult, but the shape was wrong. Too long, too smooth, moving with liquid precision that living things didn't possess. It pulled itself from the walker's chest cavity, leaving the corpse torn and empty. Then it looked directly at the camera. For 2 seconds they saw it clearly. Elongated head, eyeless face, jaw that suggested teeth behind teeth. Then it moved, faster than the camera's frame rate could track, and vanished into darkness. The room sat in silence. Finally, Gabriel spoke, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose faith had been tested by apocalypse and survived. "That's not possible. Walkers are dead. They can't be hosts for..." "For what?" Michonne asked. "Gabriel, what are we looking at?" "Something that shouldn't exist. That can't exist according to everything we know about biology, parasitology, and..." Eugene stopped himself, hands shaking as he replayed the footage. "This violates basic thermodynamics. The energy required to gestate something of that size inside a non-functioning biological system is Eugene. Rick's voice cut through the spiral into technical panic. Can we kill it? I don't know. Then we find out. Rick turned to the assembled group. Double the wall guards. No one goes out alone. We sweep the perimeter in teams of 6, maximum 100-yard range. Anything you don't recognize, you don't engage. You report and withdraw. We're dealing with something new, which means everything we know about survival might not apply. And if it comes inside the walls? Aaron asked. Rick met his eyes with the steady certainty of a leader who'd guided people through impossible situations. Then we do what we always do. We protect our people. We adapt. We survive. But even as he said it, Rick felt something he hadn't experienced since the early days of the outbreak. The sick certainty that their survival skills, everything they'd learned, every hard-won lesson about fighting the dead, might not be enough, because the dead had always been predictable, slow, thoughtless, killable. This thing had intelligence behind those eyeless features. This thing had purpose. And somewhere in the woods beyond Alexandria's walls, in the silence that should have been filled with walker moans, something was learning how to hunt survivors who'd forgotten what it meant to be prey. The radio crackled. A scout's voice, barely above whisper. Rick, you need to hear this. I'm at the western perimeter. There's someone out here, alive. They're calling for help. Pull back, Rick ordered immediately. Do not approach. Do not. Rick, it's a kid, maybe 12 years old. No bites, no scratches, but they're saying... The scout's voice broke. They're saying something's inside them, that they can feel it moving. Michonne's eyes found Rick's across the monitoring station, and in that moment, they both understood. This wasn't an outbreak they could contain. This was an invasion that had already begun. The question wasn't if they could survive. It was whether survival would require them to become something they'd sworn they'd never be. The kind of people who left children to die, screaming, alone, with something growing inside them. The child stood 30 yards beyond the western wall, visible through the morning mist that hadn't yet burned away. Rick could see her through his rifle scope, 12 years old, maybe 13, wearing torn jeans and a jacket 3 sizes too large. No visible bites, no blood, no signs of walker attack. But the way she stood perfectly still, arms wrapped around her midsection, trembling with precise, rhythmic shudders, that wasn't normal, that wasn't shock. That was something fighting to stay calm while their body betrayed them. Please, the girl called out, her voice carrying across the empty space with desperate clarity. Please, I know you're in there. I can see the walls. I need help. There's something... Her voice cracked. Something wrong with me. Beside Rick, Michonne had her binoculars trained on the girl. She's alone. No walkers in visual range. No signs of ambush. That's what worries me, Daryl muttered from Rick's other side. We're 30 miles from the nearest settlement. How does a kid that age survive alone out here? Maybe she didn't, Rick said quietly. Maybe whatever we saw on Eugene's footage found her first. The girl took 3 steps forward, stumbled, caught herself. Please, I can feel it moving. It's in my chest and I can feel it. She doubled over, gasping, hands pressed against her sternum. When she looked up, tears streaked her dirt-stained face. "Don't let me sleep, please. Every time I fall asleep, it gets stronger. I can feel it, learning." "Jesus Christ," Aaron whispered. He'd joined them on the wall, his experience leading community outreach, making him instinctively move toward helping strangers. "Rick, we can't just leave her out there." "We can't bring her in here either," Rosita countered, her tactical mind already running scenarios. "If she's infected with whatever that thing is, if it's inside her like she says, bringing her inside the walls means bringing it inside. We've got 200 people here, children, Judith, we can't risk—" "She's a child," Michonne interrupted, her voice carrying steel. "She's 12 years old, and she's terrified and asking for help. We don't abandon children. We've never abandoned children. That's not who we are." "We've never faced this before," Rick said, not looking away from his scope. "Everything we know about infected, about bites, about walker transmission, it's all based on predictable pathways. Bite transfers infection, death follows, resurrection happens. We know the timeline, we know the symptoms." He paused. "This? We know nothing. Eugene's footage shows something that shouldn't exist gestating inside a dead body. If it can use walkers as hosts, can it use the living?" Gabriel finished quietly. The girl collapsed to her knees, retching. Nothing came up. But the convulsions were violent enough that Rick could see them clearly, even at distance. When she recovered, she looked directly at the walls. "My name is Sophie," she called out, voice hoarse. 3 days ago, something attacked our camp. Not walkers, something else. It was fast, silent. It grabbed my brother, pulled him into the dark. We heard him screaming for hours." She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Then yesterday morning, I woke up and my chest hurt. Like something was pressed against my ribs from the inside, and I remembered." She stopped, breathing hard. "Remembered what?" Rick called back. "I remembered something on my face, in the dark, before I passed out. Something covering my mouth. I couldn't breathe, and then—" Sophie's voice dropped to barely audible. "Then it was gone, and I woke up. But something's inside me now. I can feel it. Growing. Please." Tears broke her voice into fragments. Please don't let me turn into one of those things." Michonne lowered her binoculars. "Rick, if there's a chance we can help her—" "There's also a chance we doom everyone inside these walls," Daryl said bluntly. He looked at Rick. "You're the one who taught us. Sentiment gets people killed. We've made hard calls before. This is another one." "She's 12, Aaron said, his normally gentle voice rising. "We're talking about leaving a 12-year-old to die alone because we're afraid of what might happen. I'm talking about protecting 200 people from what we know is out there," Daryl shot back. "You saw that footage. You saw what came out of that walker. You want that thing loose inside Alexandria." "She's not a walker." Michonne's hand moved to her katana, not threatening, just reflexive. "She's alive, conscious, asking for help. If we turn our backs on her, what are we? What have we become?" "Survivors," Rosita said quietly. "We've become survivors, and survivors make choices that keep their people alive, even when those choices hurt." Rick watched Sophie through his scope. She'd stopped moving, just knelt in the dirt, arms wrapped around herself, waiting for judgment from people she couldn't see. He'd made calls like this before, left people behind, made brutal calculations about acceptable losses. He led his group through moral wastelands because the alternative was extinction. But this felt different, because Sophie wasn't asking them to risk everything on faith. She was asking them to risk everything on hope, that maybe, possibly, they could save her before whatever was inside her emerged. Eugene, Rick spoke into his radio, based on that footage, how long does gestation take? Static, then Eugene's voice, the tight with scientific precision masking terror. Insufficient data for accurate projection. The walker's internal temperature is significantly lower than living tissue. If the entity requires heat to accelerate growth, and the girl's symptoms suggest active gestation, I'd estimate 12 to 18 hours before emergence. Can we remove it? Theoretically, perhaps. But Rick, we don't have surgical facilities equipped for... Can we try? Silence. Then, the attempt would likely kill her, the trauma alone. But there's a chance? A statistically minimal chance. Yes. Rick lowered his rifle, looked at Michonne, Daryl, Aaron, Rosita, saw his own conflict reflected in their faces, the war between who they'd been and who they'd become, between the people who saved everyone and the survivors who'd learned that saving everyone meant losing everything. Here's what we do, Rick said finally. We bring her in, but not inside the walls. The old holding cell from the Savior days, the one we used for interrogations, reinforced, isolated. We sedate her, attempt extraction. If it works, she lives. If it doesn't, his voice hardened. We're already in a space we can seal and sterilize. And if the thing emerges during surgery, Daryl asked, then we kill it fast, before it gets anywhere near the community. That's not a plan, Rosita said. That's hope with bullets attached. Hope's all we've got right now. Rick picked up the radio that connected to external speakers. Sophie, can you hear me? The girl's head snapped up. Yes, I can hear you. We're going to help you, but you need to do exactly what I say. Do you understand? Anything. Please, just don't let me become one of those things. Walk toward the gate. Slowly. Keep your hands visible. If you feel anything change, if it starts moving more, if you start feeling weak, you tell me immediately. Sophie stood, stumbling slightly. Okay, I'm coming. Rick turned to Michonne. Get Sadiq. Full surgical setup in the holding cell. Tell him... Rick paused, choosing words carefully. Tell him to prepare for something he's never done before. This is a mistake, Daryl said quietly. Your gut's telling you it is. I can see it. Maybe, Rick admitted. But the alternative is listening to her scream out there while something tears its way out of her. And I'm not ready to be the kind of person who can do that yet. Yet, Daryl repeated. What about when we have to be? Rick didn't answer. Below, the gate opened just wide enough for Sophie to slip through. Michonne and Aaron met her with weapons drawn but lowered, ready, not threatening. They guided her toward the isolated structure, her small form dwarfed between them. And as they walked, Rick saw Sophie press both hands against her chest, mouth opening in silent scream, eyes going wide with terror that no child should carry. "It's awake," she whispered, voice breaking. "Oh God, it's awake and it's—" She collapsed. Aaron caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her easily. "She's burning up. Fever's spiking. We need to move now." They ran toward the holding cell, carrying a child who'd asked for salvation and might instead bring damnation. Rick watched them go, feeling the weight of command settling heavier than it ever had. Behind him, Eugene's voice crackled over the radio. "Rick, I'm reviewing the perimeter footage from last night. There's something you need to see. The tracks we found. They don't lead away from Alexandria. They lead toward it. Multiple entry points. And Rick..." Eugene's voice dropped. "Based on thermal imaging, whatever made those tracks is already inside the walls. Has been since before dawn." The radio slipped from Rick's hand. Around Alexandria, the morning had gone quiet. Not peaceful, just waiting. For something that had learned patience in the dark. For something that needed them alive. For something that was already here. The holding cell smelled like rust and old fear. Sadiq worked with hands that had steadied themselves through a decade of apocalypse medicine. Amputations without anesthesia, childbirth in darkness, extracting bullets with kitchen knives. But those hands shook now as he studied the ultrasound monitor, jury-rigged from salvaged equipment. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Sophie lay on the medical cot, sedated but not unconscious. Her eyes tracked movement with desperate clarity, were watching Sadiq's face for any sign of hope. Sweat soaked through her shirt. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Rick stood outside the reinforced door's observation window, watching through bulletproof glass installed during the Savior occupation. Michonne beside him, hand resting on her katana, Daryl at the far end, crossbow loaded, eyes never leaving the girl. "Talk to me, Sadiq," Rick said through the intercom. Sadiq didn't look away from the monitor. There's something in her chest cavity, positioned between her heart and left lung. He stopped, professional composure cracking. It's not growing randomly. It's positioned deliberately, wrapped around her pulmonary artery. If I try to extract it surgically, she bleeds out in seconds. "How big?" Michonne asked. "Maybe 8 inches long, segmented, but it's moving, shifting position every few minutes like it knows we're watching." Sophie made a sound, half sob, half gasp. I can feel it every time it moves. It's learning my body, finding," her voice broke, "finding the best places to—" She screamed, not loud, trapped in her throat, the kind of scream that came from pain so absolute that volume became irrelevant. Sadiq grabbed her hand. "Sophie, listen to me. I need you to stay calm. Elevated heart rate makes it more active. You need to breathe slowly. Can you do that?" The girl nodded, tears streaming. She forced her breathing into slower rhythm. On the monitor, the thing inside her stopped moving. "It responds to her stress levels," Sadiq said quietly. "When she panics, it becomes agitated. When she calms down, it waits." "Waiting for what?" Rick asked. "I don't know, but Rick, I can't remove this. Not without killing her. It's integrated too deeply. The only option is—" Sadiq stopped. "Say it. We keep her sedated. Hope it doesn't emerge. Hope we're wrong about what this is." The words came out hollow. They all knew hope wasn't a strategy. Rick's radio crackled, Eugene's voice higher than usual. "Rick, we've got a situation. The thermal imaging I mentioned, I've isolated the signatures. There are 3 distinct heat sources inside Alexandria's boundaries. One is stationary in the old storage building near the east wall. 2 are mobile. They're moving through the underground drainage system we installed last year." "Where?" Rick demanded. "Current trajectory puts them—" Eugene paused, calculating. 17 minutes from the residential sector. "Rick, if they reach the homes, lock it down. Seal every drainage access point. Get everyone into the church and the community center. Airtight head count. I want to know if anyone's missing." Rick turned to Daryl. "Get teams to those access points. Heavy weapons. Whatever these things are, we assume they're hostile until proven otherwise." "They're hostile," Sophie whispered from the cot. Everyone's attention snapped to her. The thing that attacked our camp. It didn't just kill, it chose. It took my brother because he was young, strong. It left the old, the sick. It only wanted, she gasped, wanted good hosts. "How many were there?" Michonne asked. "I don't know. We never saw it clearly. Just speed and sound." Sophie's eyes squeezed shut. God, the sound, like metal scraping glass. And the screaming. My brother screamed for so long. Daryl spoke into his radio. "All teams, we're weapons hot. Anything moves in those drainage tunnels that ain't human. You put it down. Don't get close. Don't try to capture it. Just kill it." Outside the holding cell, Aaron approached at a run. "Rick, we've got a problem with the head count." "How many missing?" 3. Marissa, her daughter Emma, and one of the night watch. Jacob. They were last seen at 0400 hours during shift change. "That's 5 hours ago," Michonne said. "If they were taken, if they're hosts." "Then we've got 3 more of those things, incubating somewhere inside our walls," Rick finished. He looked at Sophie through the glass. "How long did you say? From when you felt it first to now?" 2 days, Sophie replied. "It gets stronger every few hours. I can feel it, growing, learning me." "Eugene," Rick spoke into the radio. 2 days gestation for a living host. How long until? Based on exponential growth patterns and metabolic acceleration in warm-blooded organisms. Eugene's voice carried the mechanical precision of someone calculating nightmare. Emergence within 12 to 24 hours of initial implantation. But Rick, if there are multiple hosts, if they're staggered, we could be looking at sequential emergences, one every few hours. "Building a hive," Daryl said quietly. "They're not just hunting. They're establishing territory." A scream cut through Alexandria's morning, distant from the residential sector. Rick ran. They found Jacob in his home, door forced open from the inside. He sat in his kitchen chair, hands gripping the table edge hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. Sweat poured down his face. His shirt was torn open, revealing his chest, where something moved beneath the skin, visible, segmented, pressing against the flesh like a hand pushing against plastic. "Rick," Jacob gasped. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated with pain and terror. "I woke up 3 hours ago and it was already there. I didn't feel anything happen. Just woke up and it was inside me." Rosita stood in the doorway, rifle raised but not aimed. He radioed for help 20 minutes ago. By the time we got here, the movement was already visible. Rick approached slowly, hands visible. Jacob, where are Marissa and Emma? Bedroom, there. Jacob's face contorted with pain. Jesus, it's moving! It knows you're here! He screamed, back arching. The thing beneath his skin rippled, running from his sternum toward his throat. Get out, Rick ordered the others. Everyone out, now! Rick, Michonne started. Out! They retreated to the porch. Rick stayed, eyes locked on Jacob, hand on his pistol. Listen to me, Rick said quietly. I need you to tell me what happened. Everything you remember. Jacob's breathing came in ragged gasps. I was on watch. 0400 hours. The eastern perimeter. I heard something, not walkers. Too quiet, too fast. I went to investigate and his eyes squeezed shut, and something hit me from above, from the wall itself. I don't remember anything after that. Just waking up in my bed with my family and this thing inside me. Where did you wake up? Your bed? No, guest room. Door was locked from the outside. Jacob's voice dropped. Rick, I think it put me there. Whatever this thing is, it's smart. It isolated me from Marissa and Emma, put me somewhere I'd be contained when his chest exploded, not outward, not yet, but the skin split in a vertical line from sternum to navel. Blood welled, and through the opening, Rick saw it. Sleek, black, segmented, eyeless head pressing against the wound from inside. Rick, Jacob whispered, blood on his lips. Don't let it. Rick fired 3 shots, center mass. The thing inside Jacob shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, like glass shattering, like nothing that should come from anything biological. Jacob slumped, dead instantly, but the thing kept moving. It pushed through the chest cavity, tearing the wound wider, pulling itself into the open. 7 feet long, impossibly thin, covered in translucent membrane that sloughed off as it emerged, revealing black exoskeleton that gleamed like oil. It had no eyes, but it looked directly at Rick and hissed. Rick emptied his magazine. The creature jerked with each impact, dark fluid, not blood. Something else, spraying from entry wounds. But it didn't stop, didn't slow, it lunged. Rick dove sideways as the thing's tail, barbed, segmented, ending in a blade-like point, slammed through the kitchen table where he'd been standing. The tail retracted, dripping with something that smoked when it hit the floor. Acid. Rick, Daryl's voice from outside. Rick scrambled backward, reloading. The creature oriented toward him with predatory precision, head lowering, jaw opening to reveal Jesus Christ. A second set of jaws, inside the first, extending on a piston of muscle and cartilage. It struck. Crossbow bolt hit it mid-lunge, punching through the side of its elongated skull. The creature's trajectory shifted, slamming into the wall instead of Rick's face. It thrashed, that impossible tail whipping through the air, destroying furniture, embedding itself in walls. Daryl appeared in the doorway, already reloading. Move! Rick ran. They cleared the porch as the creature recovered, pulling itself upright with movements too fluid for anything with an exoskeleton. It stepped into the doorway, crouched, ready to pursue. Rosita opened fire with her rifle, full automatic, 20 rounds. The creature's body jerked, perforated, dark fluid spraying across the porch. It shrieked again, that metal glass sound, then stopped, went still, collapsed in the doorway, leaking acid that ate through the floorboards. Rick approached cautiously, pistol raised. "Is it?" The creature's tail whipped up, faster than sight, piercing through the air where Rick's head had been a millisecond before. Then it truly died. The body went slack. The acid stopped flowing. The thing that had been growing inside Jacob for hours lay motionless, a nightmare rendered flesh. "What the hell is that?" Rosita whispered. Rick didn't answer. He was looking at Jacob's house, at the bedroom door still closed, where Marissa and Emma were, where they'd been since last night. It isolated me from Marissa and Emma. Rick ran to the bedroom door, locked from outside. He kicked it open. Marissa sat on the bed, arms around her daughter, both staring with eyes that didn't blink, both with visible movement beneath their skin, both with hours left before emergence. Marissa spoke, voice flat. "We tried to run. It was in the walls, in the dark. We tried." Her voice broke. "Please, please don't let us become those things. Please." Emma just stared, tears silent, one hand pressed to her chest, where something shifted beneath her sternum. And Rick understood, with crystalline horror, what the creatures were doing. Not random hunting, strategic implantation, building numbers, building a hive, inside Alexandria's walls while they slept. "How many?" Rick asked Eugene over the radio, voice dead calm. "How many thermal signatures total inside our walls?" Static. Then Eugene's voice, stripped of technical jargon, reduced to raw terror. 17. The church had become a triage center for the damned. 17 hosts sat in pews designed for prayer, watched by armed guards who'd been given one order: if they start to turn, shoot them. Rick stood at the altar, looking at faces he'd known for years. Marissa clutching her daughter Emma, Jacob's wife Sarah, who'd been sleeping beside him when the thing took him. 4 members of the Night Watch, 2 teenagers, 3 children under 10, 17 people with something growing inside them. 17 time bombs counting down on different clocks. Sophie had been the warning, the others were the invasion. They went for the vulnerable first, Siddiq explained, his medical assessment delivered in the flat tone of someone compartmentalizing horror. Night Watch isolated on patrol, families sleeping in separate rooms, anyone alone. They're intelligent hunters. They identified targets with minimal resistance. Michonne stood beside Rick, her voice low. "We need to make a decision, now, before more of those things emerge." "We already made one," Daryl said from the church entrance, crossbow across his chest. "We brought that girl inside the walls. This is the consequence." "She was 12 years old asking for help," Michonne shot back. "And now 17 more are infected because we chose sentiment over security." Daryl's voice carried no accusation, just brutal fact. "Rick, you know what needs to happen here." Rick looked at the hosts, at Emma, 9 years old, sitting perfectly still while her mother whispered desperate prayers, at Marcus, who'd helped build Alexandria's walls with his bare hands, at Kelly, Connie's sister, who was trying so hard not to cry that her whole body shook. "We can try extraction," Rick said. "On 17 people." Siddiq's voice rose. "Rick, I couldn't save one. The surgery is complex, dangerous, and requires precision we don't have. Attempting it on 17 hosts means we try. Rick interrupted. Because the alternative is executing 17 people for being victims. The alternative is protecting 200 others from becoming victims, Rosita countered. She stood near the door, rifle ready. Rick, I know how this sounds. I know what we look like making this argument, but we've got maybe hours before these things start emerging. Once they do, once we have 17 of those creatures inside Alexandria, we can't contain that. You saw what one did. It took 3 of us to kill it, and it almost killed you first. We seal them in, Rick said. Use the church, reinforce the doors. When emergence happens, we deal with it from outside. You want to trap 17 people in a room with 17 of those things? Aaron's voice cracked. Rick, these are our people. We've lived with them, fought beside them. Some of them have children. Which is exactly why we can't let those creatures loose, Daryl said quietly. Aaron, I get it. Every instinct says we save them, but instincts that work against walkers don't work here. Walkers are slow, stupid. These things, he gestured at the church, fast, smart, and they're using our compassion against us. Gabriel stepped forward, his collar visible beneath his jacket. The priest who'd found faith through apocalypse, now facing a congregation doomed by biology. There must be another way. We can't give up on them. We're not giving up, Rick said. We're being realistic about resources. Siddiq, if you had unlimited time, perfect conditions, what's the survival rate for extraction? Siddiq looked at the floor. Maybe 20% per patient, and that's optimistic. So we save maybe 3, maybe 4, and the rest die anyway. Rick's voice stayed steady through sheer force of will. Or we focus on containment, keep them comfortable. When it happens, we're ready. We kill the creatures before they spread. While they're still inside people, Michonne said. Rick, you're talking about shooting these people while they're conscious, while they're still themselves. I'm talking about stopping those things before they reproduce, before they establish a real foothold. Rick turned to face her. You saw what one did to Jacob. Imagine 17 of them, coordinated, hunting in a community with 200 people. Half of them children. Emma's voice cut through the debate, small and terrified. Are you going to kill us? The church went silent. The little girl looked directly at Rick with eyes too old for her face, eyes that had already seen the world end once and understood it was about to end again. We don't want to die, Emma continued. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just sleeping, and her voice cracked. And now there's something inside me, and I can feel it moving, and I'm so scared, and you're talking about shooting us like we're already dead. Marissa pulled her daughter closer, and for a moment the resemblance was so sharp it hurt. A mother trying to protect her child from something that was already inside her, eating her from within. Rick crouched down to Emma's eye level. We're not going to kill you. We're going to do everything we can to save you. All of you. But I need you to understand something. He looked around at the other hosts. These creatures, whatever they are, they're using you. They need you alive to grow, and when they're ready, they're going to come out whether we want them to or not. So we have 2 choices. We can try to remove them now, which is dangerous and probably won't work. Or we can prepare for when they emerge. and kill them the second they do. What about sedation? Aaron asked. Keep them unconscious. Maybe that slows the gestation. Sophie said the opposite, Sadiq replied. She said it got stronger when she slept. Whatever these things are, unconsciousness might actually accelerate their development. Eugene's voice crackled over the radio. Rick, I've been monitoring the thermal signatures. I need to show you something. It's important. Rick left the church, Michonne and Daryl following. They found Eugene in his monitoring station. He's surrounded by screens showing thermal overlays of Alexandria. Look at this, Eugene pointed to a screen showing heat signatures throughout the community. 17 hosts, yes, but notice the pattern. They're not randomly distributed. They're positioned strategically. Watch. He played back the thermal footage from the last 6 hours, time-lapse style. The infected hosts didn't move randomly. They stayed in specific locations, spread throughout Alexandria in a pattern that looked almost geometric. It's a perimeter, Michonne said. They're spacing themselves out, creating coverage. Not just coverage, Eugene corrected. Watch what happens when I overlay this with our defensive positions. He added another layer to the display. The host positions corresponded almost exactly with Alexandria's strategic defensive points. The gates, the armory, the walls, the watchtowers. They're targeting our infrastructure, Daryl said, by taking key positions before they emerge. Worse, Eugene said, they're creating kill zones. When these things emerge, they'll be positioned to cut off retreat, divide our forces, isolate civilians. This isn't random infection. This is tactical deployment. Rick stared at the screen, feeling the cold mathematics of it settle over him. They're not just breeding, they're preparing for invasion. The hosts aren't eggs, they're soldiers being positioned before battle. Which means when emergence happens, Michonne said quietly, they'll be coordinated, working together, and we'll be fighting 17 enemies who know our defensive positions better than we do. The radio crackled, Aaron's voice tight with urgency. Rick, you need to get back to the church, now. Something's happening with one of the hosts. They ran. When they reached the church, they found Marcus on the floor, convulsing. The veteran who'd helped build Alexandria's walls now jerked with seizures while something moved beneath his skin like a fish beneath ice. It's accelerating, Sadiq said, checking vitals that didn't matter anymore. His core temperature is spiking, heart rate approaching stroke levels. This is it. This is emergence. Everyone out, Rick ordered. Seal the doors. Nobody shoots until it's clear of him. Rick, we can't just... Gabriel started. Get out, Rick roared. That's an order. The church emptied. 16 other hosts were escorted to a separate building, the old community center, reinforced and locked. Only Marcus remained, body failing as something that shouldn't exist, prepared to be born. Through the church window, they watched. Marcus's convulsions stopped. For 3 seconds, he lay perfectly still. Then his chest began to bulge. The skin stretched impossibly tight. Something pressed outward from within and tore through. The creature emerged faster than Jacob's had. Practice, perhaps? Or this one was older, more developed. It exploded from Marcus's chest in a spray of blood and acid, unfolding like a nightmare flower. 7 feet of black exoskeleton, eyeless head, secondary jaws extending like a piston, tail whipping through the air, dripping with acid that ate through the wooden pews. It stood over Marcus's corpse for exactly 2 seconds. Then it looked at the window directly at Rick and hissed. "Light it up," Rick said. Gunfire shattered the church windows. The creature moved impossibly fast, dodging, weaving, using the pews as cover. Bullets that should have hit struck wood instead. The thing was learning, adapting, understanding cover and tactics in real time. It charged the door. "Brace!" Daryl shouted. The creature hit the reinforced entrance like a battering ram. The wood cracked but held. It struck again, each impact sending splinters flying. "We need to fall back," Rosita said. "Regroup at—" The creature stopped hitting the door. Silence. "Where did it go?" Aaron whispered. Eugene's voice over the radio, panic barely controlled. "Thermal shows it's moving, inside the walls. It's in the church's crawl space, heading toward—" static. "Toward the community center, where the other hosts are." Rick's blood went cold. "It's going to protect them. It's going to guard the others while they gestate." "Or kill them," Daryl said. "Or take the biomass for itself." "No." Michonne's voice carried terrible certainty. "It's smart enough to position hosts tactically. It's smart enough to protect its hive. That thing is going to guard 16 more incubators until they're ready to emerge." And when they did, when 17 of those creatures were loose inside Alexandria simultaneously, the community would fall, not through overwhelming force, but through mathematics. A 200 people versus 17 perfectly evolved predators that could coordinate, adapt, and hunt in enclosed spaces. The arithmetic was simple and devastating. "We're going to lose," Rick said quietly, "unless we do something none of us want to do." Michonne met his eyes. "The hosts." "We have to kill them," Rick said, "before they emerge, all 16. "They're still people," Gabriel whispered. "They're already dead," Daryl corrected. "They just haven't stopped breathing yet." And in the terrible silence that followed, they all understood. Survival had become a choice between mass execution and slow extinction, between becoming monsters who killed the innocent and becoming corpses who died protecting them. Rick reached for his radio. His hand stopped halfway, because even he didn't know which choice was right anymore. The community center had become a waiting room for the condemned. 16 hosts sat inside, some crying, some praying, some just staring at walls with eyes that had already accepted what was coming. Outside, 50 armed residents formed a perimeter, weapons trained on doors and windows. Not to protect the people inside, to contain what they would become. Rick stood 20 feet from the entrance, hand on his pistol, staring at a door he'd helped build 5 years ago, when Alexandria represented hope instead of a cage. Beside him, Michonne's voice was barely above whisper. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Daryl said from Rick's other side. "We've been over it. Extraction's impossible. Containment failed. That thing's already loose, protecting them. The math is simple. They die, or everyone dies." "It's not math," Michonne shot back. "It's people. Kelly, who learned sign language to talk to Connie. Marcus's son Daniel, who's 16 and coaches the younger kids in combat training. Sarah, who lost her husband 3 hours ago and is now sitting in their waiting for us to kill her for being a victim. You think I don't know that? Daryl's voice carried rare emotion. You think I want to do this, but wanting don't change reality. We've got 16 people with things inside them that will tear them apart in hours. And when those things emerge, they'll be smart, coordinated, and positioned to destroy everything we've built. Rick hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, just stared at the door while his mind ran calculations that had no right answer. Execute 16 people who were technically still alive, or gamble 200 lives, including Judith, R.J., every child in Alexandria, on the hope that they could kill 17 creatures fast enough to prevent slaughter. Rick! Michonne's hand found his arm. Look at me. He turned. They saw in her eyes the same war he felt, between the leader who made hard calls and the person who remembered why they fought to survive. We've crossed lines before, Michonne said quietly. Done things we swore we'd never do. But Rick, if we execute 16 innocent people because we're afraid of what might happen, who are we? What have we become? Survivors, Rick replied. Same thing we've always become when the choices are impossible. No. Michonne's voice hardened. We've always found another way. Always. That's what makes us different from the people who used to run this world. We don't give up on people just because saving them is hard. This isn't hard, Rick said. This is impossible. And there's a difference. A scream cut through the debate from inside the community center. Kelly! The doors burst open. Connie ran out, hands moving in frantic sign language that Magna translated, Kelly's seizing! She says it's moving faster! She can feel it near her heart. Rick made the decision in 2 seconds. Get Sadiq. We try extraction on Kelly. If it works, we do the rest. If it doesn't, he couldn't finish. And the creature guarding them? Rosita asked. The one that's already killed Marcus. We deal with it, Daryl said, already moving. Me, Rick, Aaron. Heavy weapons. We draw it out, pin it down, kill it fast. It's too fast, Aaron protested. You saw what it did. It dodged automatic fire. They used cover like it understood tactics. Then we don't give it cover. Rick pulled out his radio. Eugene, can you flood the church crawl space? Static then. With what? Water's off. Gas lines are... Gasoline, the emergency reserves. Pump it into the crawl space. Force that thing into the open. Rick, that'll destroy the church. The church or the community. Choose. Silence. Then, beginning fuel transfer now. You'll have approximately 4 minutes before structural integrity fails. They moved like practiced violence. Rick, Daryl, and Aaron forming a triangle around the church entrance. Weapons trained on the crawl space access hatch. Below, gasoline flooded the narrow space where thermal imaging showed the creature hiding. Eugene's voice counted down. 3 minutes, 2:30, 2 minutes. The hatch exploded outward. The creature emerged wreathed in gasoline fumes, moving with liquid speed despite the confined space. It oriented on Rick immediately, some instinct or intelligence recognizing the leader. It lunged. Daryl's crossbow bolt took it in the shoulder, spinning it mid-leap. Rick's rifle burst, caught it in the flank, dark fluid spraying. Aaron's shotgun blast hit center mass. stopping its charge. The creature crashed to the ground, twitching, damaged but not dead. "Now!" Rick shouted. Eugene triggered the ignition. The church's crawl space erupted in flames. Fire roared through the confined space, feeding on gasoline and oxygen and the wooden bones of a building built for salvation. The creature shrieked that metal glass sound and tried to retreat into the flames, tried to escape. Rick emptied his magazine into it. So did Daryl. So did Aaron. 30 rounds, point-blank range. The creature's exoskeleton cracked, split, leaked acid and blood and fluids that had no name. It thrashed once, a tail whipping wildly, nearly taking Rick's head off, then died, truly, finally dead. The church burned behind them as they stood over the corpse, breathing hard, covered in sweat and adrenaline. "One down," Aaron gasped. 16 to go, Daryl finished, "if they emerge." In the makeshift surgical area, a cleared classroom from Alexandria's school, Siddiq worked with hands that refused to shake, despite everything screaming at them too. Kelly lay sedated but conscious, her eyes tracking his movements while Connie held her hand, signing reassurances that both sisters knew were lies. "I'm going to make an incision," Siddiq explained, scalpel ready. "Try to access the creature before it's fully developed. If I can sever its connection to your pulmonary system, there's a chance." "Just do it," Kelly whispered, "before I lose my nerve." Siddiq cut. Blood welled immediately. Too much, too fast. The creature had wrapped itself around Kelly's major arteries exactly as Sophie's had. Every severing attempt risked catastrophic hemorrhage. "Suction," Siddiq ordered. His assistant, a former nurse named Anna, kept the surgical field clear while he worked with precision born of desperation. He found the creature's head first, elongated, eyeless, already formed. It moved slightly as his instruments touched it, like it was aware of the intrusion. "It's too integrated," Siddiq said, voice breaking. "But I can't. If I pull it now, she bleeds out. If I wait, it emerges and kills her anyway." "Then make a choice," Kelly gasped. "Don't let me become one of those things. Please." Connie's hands moved frantically. Magna translated, "She's saying there has to be a way. There's always a way. We don't give up. We never give up." "Sometimes giving up is mercy," Siddiq replied, and hated himself for saying it. He looked at Kelly, at Connie, at the impossible choice between painful death now and horrific death later, and chose. "I'm going to try something," Siddiq said. "It's dangerous, experimental, but it's the only option that doesn't guarantee death." "Do it," Kelly whispered. Siddiq didn't explain. No time, and explanation would make her afraid. He just worked, hands moving with surgical precision to do something that violated every medical principle he'd learned. Instead of removing the creature, he killed it in place. Injected it directly with a compound of bleach, alcohol, and formaldehyde, a solution designed to destroy tissue without requiring extraction. The creature convulsed inside Kelly's chest. She screamed, back arching despite sedation, but it died. Siddiq watched on the monitor as the thing stopped moving, stopped growing, became just dead matter inside a living body. "Now I remove it," he said, piece by piece, carefully, hoping the dead tissue doesn't tear arteries on the way out. The surgery took 40 minutes. When it was done, Kelly was alive, barely, weak, damaged, but breathing without something growing inside her. "It worked," Anna whispered, disbelief evident. "It worked," Sadiq confirmed. Then, louder to the people waiting outside, "It worked! The procedure works!" Rick burst into the surgical area. "You can replicate it on the others." "In theory, yes, but Rick, it's dangerous." Kelly almost died 3 times during extraction. "The success rate is better than 0, Rick finished. "Which is what we had before. How many can you do?" "With proper spacing, proper recovery time, maybe 2 a day, maybe." "We don't have days," Daryl said from the doorway. "We've got hours, maybe less." "Then we triage," Rick decided. "Youngest first, most likely to survive the procedure. We save who we can." "And the others?" Michonne asked, though she already knew the answer. We make them comfortable, and when it happens, we're ready." Over the next 6 hours, Sadiq performed the procedure 4 more times. 2 succeeded. Emma, Marissa's daughter, survived, crying into her mother's arms afterward. Daniel, the 16-year-old, survived, but lost so much blood he'd need weeks to recover. 2 failed. Sarah died on the table when the creature's removal triggered hemorrhage. Sadiq couldn't stop. Another host, a man named Thomas, died when the injected solution caused cardiac arrest before the creature died. 11 hosts remained. 11 people sitting in the community center, watching the clock, knowing that Sadiq couldn't save them all before emergence. Rick stood before them as sunset turned Alexandria's walls gold and red. "I won't lie to you," he said. "We can't save everyone. The procedure takes too long, requires too much recovery time we don't have. Some of you..." His voice caught. Some of you are going to die. I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry." Marissa stood, Emma clinging to her side. "Then let us choose. Who gets the procedure? We decide, not you." "You can't," Rick started. "We absolutely can," Marissa interrupted. "You're asking some of us to die so others can live. Fine, but we choose who, not you. You don't get to carry that weight." The hosts looked at each other. Some cried, some held hands, some just stared with eyes that had already accepted death. Then, one by one, they made their choices. 3 elderly hosts volunteered to go last, knowing they wouldn't survive to their turn. 2 parents gave their spots to younger residents. One teenager, barely 17, said quietly, "I've lived through the apocalypse. That's enough. Save someone who hasn't seen the world yet." By the time they finished, the list was clear. 6 would get the procedure, 5 would die waiting. And in the terrible mathematics of survival, mercy became another word for execution. Rick left the community center unable to look at the people he was condemning. Michonne found him on the wall, staring at nothing. "We're saving 6, she said quietly. 6 people who would have died. That's not nothing." "We're killing 5, Rick replied. 5 people who might have survived if we had more time, better resources, different choices." He turned to her. "And how many hard calls until we're just the monsters who survived everyone else?" "I don't know," Michonne admitted, "but I know we're still trying, still fighting to save who we can. That has to mean something." "Does it? Or are we just telling ourselves that to sleep at night?" Before Michonne could answer, Eugene's voice crackled over the radio, higher than usual, stripped of technical jargon. Rick, the hosts in the community center, the ones we couldn't save. They're showing signs of accelerated emergence, all 5 simultaneously. How long? Rick asked. Minutes, maybe less, and Rick, the thermal imaging shows them, coordinating, moving to specific positions inside the building. They're not fighting it anymore, they're helping it. Rick's hand found his pistol, and he understood with terrible clarity. The hosts weren't just incubators, they were collaborators. The creatures could communicate with them, promise them something, survival, purpose, a transformation, anything that made death bearable. And some of them were accepting. Lock it down, Rick ordered. Everyone clear the area. When those things emerge, we burn the building with them inside. Rick, Gabriel's voice carrying weight of faith, tested beyond breaking. Those people are still alive, still conscious. You're talking about burning them alive. I'm talking about stopping those creatures before they escape, Rick replied. We're out of time, out of choices. This is what survival looks like now. He didn't wait for agreement, just gave the order that would haunt him forever. Burn it. The community center went up in flames at dusk. Rick stood 50 yards back, watching fire consume a building where 5 people still breathed, still felt, still understood what was happening to them. Eugene had soaked the perimeter with remaining gasoline. Daryl had thrown the Molotov cocktail through the window with the precision of someone who'd done terrible things before and would carry this one alongside the rest. The screams started immediately. Not the hosts, the creatures. That metal glass shriek as fire found them mid-emergence, caught them between human flesh and alien biology, burned both with democratic cruelty. But under those inhuman sounds, Rick heard others, human voices crying out. Not in pain, they were already dead, bodies failing as the creatures tore through them, but in betrayal, in the terrible understanding that the people they'd trusted had chosen expediency over mercy. They were already gone, Daryl said quietly beside him, he reading Rick's expression. The moment those things got inside them, we didn't kill people, we stopped monsters. Tell that to them, Rick replied, nodding toward the crowd behind them. Alexandria's residents watched the burning building in silence. No one spoke, no one looked away. They bore witness to what survival cost when the enemy was inside your own people. Michonne stood with Judith and RJ, her hand over RJ's eyes, even though the boy was too young to understand what he was seeing. Judith was old enough. She stared at the flames with her father's eyes, learning lessons about command that no child should learn. Gabriel stood apart, rosary in hand, lips moving in prayers for the dying and the damned, though Rick wasn't sure which category they fell into anymore. The building burned for 17 minutes. When it collapsed, thermal imaging confirmed no movement inside. 5 hosts dead, 5 creatures destroyed before they could fully emerge. 6 saved through surgery, the 11 dead, 17 total infected, the mathematics of survival written in smoke and ash. It's over, Aaron said, but his voice carried no relief. No, Eugene corrected, approaching with a tablet showing fresh thermal scans. It's not. Rick, the walkers, the herds that disappeared. I've been tracking thermal patterns in the surrounding areas. They're returning. Returning where? Here, to Alexandria. Every herd within 20 miles is converging on our location. Michonne stepped forward. That's not walker behavior. They don't coordinate. They don't have destination-driven migration. They do if something's calling them, Eugene replied, pulling up a spectrograph. I've been monitoring subsonic frequencies. There's a signal, too low for human hearing, but it started 3 hours ago, emanating from... He paused, checking coordinates. From the forest, 2 miles northeast. Same direction the original tracks came from. A nest, Daryl said immediately. There's more of them. And they're calling the dead here. Why? Rosita asked. What do they gain from sending walkers to us? Rick stared at the collapsed building, at the smoke still rising, and understood. Food. They're not sending walkers to attack us. They're sending them to be converted, used as hosts. But the walker we found was already dead, Michonne protested. The one that was opened from inside. If these creatures can use corpses, then they don't need living hosts, Rick finished. No, they can use the dead, build their numbers without risking contact with armed survivors. He turned to Eugene. How many walkers are converging? Eugene checked his scans. Current count, 4,000, more arriving hourly. By dawn, we're looking at 10,000 walkers surrounding Alexandria, and if even a fraction of those become hosts, we're not fighting 17 creatures, Aaron said quietly. We're fighting hundreds. The weight of it settled over them like the smoke, choking, inescapable. We can't stay here, Rick said. We evacuate now, leave Alexandria to the dead. This is our home, Gabriel protested. We've built this, defended this. We can't just abandon. We can and we will, Rick interrupted, because staying means fighting an enemy that reproduces using an unlimited supply of raw material. Every walker that reaches those creatures becomes another soldier in their army. We can't win that fight. Where do we go? Michonne asked. Away, Rick replied. Anywhere that's not here. We take what we can carry, destroy what we can't, and we move before those herds arrive. They'll follow, Daryl observed. If those things are calling walkers here, they can call them anywhere. Then we find the source, the nest. We destroy it before it builds an army we can't stop. With what force? Rosita gestured at Alexandria's residents. 200 people, half of them children, elderly or wounded. Rick, we're not a military, we're a community. We can't assault an alien nest with... Then we get help, Rick said. He pulled out the long-range radio Eugene had been maintaining for years, the one that connected to other settlements. Hilltop, Oceanside, the Commonwealth if we can reach them. We send word about what we're facing, warn everyone, build an alliance. They won't believe us, Aaron said. Creatures that use dead bodies as incubators, that coordinate attacks, that call walkers like shepherds calling sheep. It sounds insane. Then we show them, Rick replied. He nodded at Eugene. You recorded the footage, the emergence, everything. We send that. Let them see what's coming. Eugene's hands shook as he worked the radio. Transmitting now, all frequencies, emergency broadcast. This is Alexandria sending warning to all settlements. His voice faded into technical details. Coordinates, threat assessment, request for assistance. Rick didn't listen. He was watching the horizon where the first walker herd appeared, a dark mass against sunset, thousands of animated corpses shambling toward Alexandria with purpose that shouldn't exist. And behind them, in the forest, something waited, something that had learned to weaponize the apocalypse itself. Something that turned humanity's greatest nightmare into its breeding ground. The evacuation began at midnight. 200 people, 50 vehicles, whatever supplies they could carry in 3 hours of frantic loading. Food, water, weapons, medicine, children crying, adults moving with mechanical efficiency born of practice. They'd abandoned homes before. This was just another end of another world. Rick supervised from the gate, checking manifests, directing traffic, making sure no one got left behind. Judith found him there, 8 years old and far too serious. "Daddy, where are we going?" Rick crouched to her level. "Somewhere safe." "There's no safe anymore," Judith replied. Not accusatory, just factual. A child of the apocalypse who'd learned that safety was temporary at best. "Then somewhere safer," Rick corrected. "Somewhere those things can't reach us." "They'll follow. You said so. They call the walkers. The walkers go everywhere, so they can reach anywhere." Judith's young face carried logic that hurt to see. "We can't run from them. We have to fight." "We will, but not here. Not when we're outnumbered and they control the battlefield." "Then where?" Rick didn't have an answer. He pulled Judith close, feeling her warmth against his chest, and wondered how many more times he'd have to evacuate, to run, to abandon homes in the name of survival. How many more times before there was nowhere left to run to. Michonne approached, RJ sleeping in her arms. "Last vehicle's loaded, we're ready." "The building?" Rick asked. "Wired with Eugene's remaining explosives. We blow it when we're clear. Deny them any supplies, any shelter, anything useful." Rick stood, hand finding Judith's shoulder. "Then we go." They walked toward the convoy, a line of vehicles waiting to carry Alexandria's survivors into another uncertain future. Behind them, the community they'd built stood silent. Walls they'd reinforced, gardens they'd planted, homes they'd made from ruins, all about to become another ruin. Daryl waited at the lead vehicle, crossbow across his lap. "You sure about this?" "No," Rick admitted, "but the alternative is staying and dying. At least running gives us a chance." "Running's what we did at the start," Daryl observed, "before we learned to build, to defend, to make stands. Now we're right back where we started, refugees with nowhere to go." "Then we find somewhere," Rick said, "and we build again. And if we have to abandon that too, we build somewhere else. We keep building until we find a place these things can't reach." "And if no place like that exists?" Rick looked at the walkers visible in the distance, thousands of them, shambling toward Alexandria with coordinated purpose, driven by something in the forest that had learned to turn the dead into weapons. "Then we make one," Rick said. "We fight, we survive, we endure. Same thing we've always done." He climbed into the vehicle, Michonne beside him, children in back. The convoy started moving, the headlights cutting through darkness. Behind them, Eugene triggered the explosives. Alexandria erupted in flames. Walls collapsed, buildings imploded. Everything they'd built for years consumed in seconds. Scorched earth policy to deny the enemy resources. Rick watched through the rearview mirror as their home burned, and in the forest beyond the flames, something watched back. multiple somethings. Thermal imaging would have shown them dozens of heat signatures. The creatures that had emerged from walker hosts, building their numbers in silence, using the dead world as a nursery, exactly as Rick had feared. They didn't pursue the convoy, didn't need to, because the walkers were already following. 10,000 animated corpses tracking the survivors, driven by subsonic signals only the dead could hear. The creatures didn't need to chase, they just needed to direct the herd, and the herd never stopped, never tired, never gave up. Eugene's voice came over the convoy radio. "Rick, thermal imaging shows the walker herd changing direction. They're not heading toward Alexandria anymore. They're following us." "Speed?" Rick asked. "A standard walker pace. We can outrun them easily." "For how long?" Michonne asked. "Hours? Days? How long before we run out of fuel, supplies, road?" "Then we find the nest before that happens," Rick replied. "We destroy the source, stop the signal calling the walkers, end this before it spreads beyond containment." "And if we can't find it?" Aaron's voice joined the radio channel. "If it's mobile, if there are multiple nests, if—" "Then we adapt," Rick interrupted. "Same thing we always do when the rules change. We learn the new rules. We exploit them. We survive." But even as he said it, Rick felt the weight of accumulating compromises. They'd burned 5 people alive to stop creatures from emerging. They'd abandoned their home to deny the enemy resources. They were running from an enemy that reproduced using the unlimited supply of walkers that defined their world. Each choice made sense tactically. Each choice cost something that couldn't be measured in resources or casualties. Each choice moved them further from the people they'd been toward the people survival demanded they become. And somewhere behind them, in the burning ruins of Alexandria, creatures that shouldn't exist learned what humans would sacrifice for survival. He learned the limits of mercy, learned that desperation made people predictable, learned to hunt. The convoy drove through darkness toward uncertain dawn. Behind them, 10,000 walkers followed. Above them, smoke from burning homes rose like prayer toward stars that didn't care. And ahead, hidden in forests that had reclaimed the dead world, the nest waited, patient, intelligent, growing. The convoy stopped at dawn, 15 miles from Alexandria's burning ruins, not because they'd reached safety, because the road ahead was blocked. Walkers filled the highway for half a mile, not a random herd, but a wall of corpses standing shoulder to shoulder, absolutely motionless. Thousands of them, just waiting. "That's not normal," Daryl said, binoculars trained on the blockade. "Walkers don't form lines, don't coordinate. They sure as hell don't stand still when there's live meat this close." Eugene studied his thermal scanner. "They're not standing still voluntarily. Look at the subsonic frequency readings. The signal's stronger here. Significantly stronger, it's holding them in place." "Like a fence," Michonne observed. "They're not blocking the road randomly. They're herding us, forcing us to go a specific direction." Rick studied the map. Northeast, same direction as the nest. "They're driving us toward it." "Why?" Aaron asked. "If they wanted us dead, why not just attack? Why this strategy?" "Because they don't want us dead," Rosita replied, realization dawning with horror. They want us captured alive for hosting. The convoy radio crackled, Gabriel's voice tight with controlled panic. "Rick, the herd behind us. It's accelerating. Not running, but moving faster than normal walker pace. Well, we've got maybe 20 minutes before they're on top of us." Rick pulled out his map, marking positions. Walkers blocking the road ahead. Herd approaching from behind. Forest on both sides. Dense, difficult terrain for vehicles. "We're being funneled," he said quietly. "They've studied us, learned how we move, how we think. They're using the walkers like chess pieces, forcing us exactly where they want us." "Then we don't go where they want," Daryl said. "We abandon the vehicles, move through the forest on foot, lose them in the trees." With 200 people, Michonne gestured at the convoy. Children, elderly, wounded. We'd have to leave half our people behind. "Or we fight through," Aaron suggested. "Clear the roadblock, push through before the herd behind us arrives." "Fight through thousands of walkers?" Rosita shook her head. "We'd waste ammunition we need for the creatures, and even if we clear a path, those things will just reposition the walkers and block us somewhere else." "Then we do what they don't expect," Rick said. He pointed at the map. "They're herding us northeast toward the nest, so we go there voluntarily on our terms." Silence. "You want to walk into the nest?" Gabriel's voice over radio carried disbelief. "Rick, that's suicide. Staying here is suicide," Rick countered. "Running until we're out of fuel and supplies is suicide. At least if we attack the nest, we might destroy the source, stop the signal, we end the coordination." "With what force?" Eugene asked. "Rick, we're civilians with hunting rifles, not a military strike team. The nest will be defended heavily by creatures that killed experienced fighters with automatic weapons." "Then we get creative," Rick replied. "Daryl, how much fuel do we have?" "Convoys carrying maybe 200 gallons, plus whatever's in the tanks." "Explosives?" "Eugene's got maybe 10 improvised devices, nothing military grade." "Fire?" "Molotov cocktails. Yeah, as many as we can make with liquor supplies." Rick's tactical mind assembled the pieces. We split up. Majority stays with the convoy, fortifies position here, holds off the approaching herd. Small team, me, Daryl, Michonne, Eugene, Aaron, Rosita. We take one vehicle, minimal supplies, maximum weapons. We go to the nest. We burn it. 6 people against what could be dozens of those things. Aaron's voice rose. "Rick, that's not tactics. That's sacrifice." "It's the only play that might work," Rick said. "The creatures are intelligent. They've learned to coordinate walkers. But they're also organic, biological. They burn. And if we can destroy their nest before they establish a real foothold, before they spread beyond this region, we save everyone." Michonne studied Rick's face, reading the calculation behind his eyes. "You're not planning to come back." Rick didn't deny it. "Planning and hoping are different. I'm planning to destroy that nest whatever it costs. I'm hoping we survive doing it. But hope's not a strategy." "Then I'm coming with you." Judith's voice cut through the adults. Everyone turned. The 8-year-old stood beside the vehicle, her father's gun, the python he'd given her years ago, holstered at her hip. "Absolutely not," Rick said immediately. "Judith, you stay with—" "No." Her voice carried steel beyond her years. You taught me to fight, to survive, to protect people. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing too. You're 8 years old. I'm old enough to know when you're going on a mission you don't expect to survive, Judith interrupted. I'm not letting you go alone. Michonne knelt beside Judith. Baby, we need you here to help protect RJ, to help the other children. That's just as important as... You're lying, Judith said flatly. You're going to die fighting those things, and you want me safe so I can grow up without you. But I'd rather fight with you than live without you. The terrible logic of a child who'd lost too many parents. Rick crouched to meet Judith's eyes, saw himself reflected, the same determination, same refusal to accept impossible odds, same willingness to sacrifice everything for people who mattered. You're right, Rick admitted. I might not come back, probably won't. This is the kind of mission where survival is the exception, not the rule. But Judith, his voice cracked slightly, if I die knowing you're safe, that's enough. If I die knowing you'll grow up, lead people, maybe build something better than we ever could, that makes it worth it. It's not worth it to me, Judith whispered, tears breaking through the tough exterior. It's never worth it. Rick pulled her close, feeling her small body shake against his chest. I know, I'm sorry, but this is what leaders do. We make the calls nobody else can. We carry the weight. And sometimes he couldn't finish. Sometimes the weight crushed you. And all you could hope was that what you'd built survived your breaking. The strike team assembled 30 minutes later. 6 people, 1 vehicle, weapons, explosives, fuel for burning, maps showing the estimated nest location based on signal triangulation. Rick said goodbye to Judith and RJ, the hardest words he'd ever spoken, knowing they might be his last. Michonne did the same, her warrior's composure breaking as RJ asked when she'd be back. Be soon, Michonne lied. We'll be back soon. Gabriel blessed them, prayers for soldiers going to certain death, words that couldn't change outcomes but might ease the dying. The convoy's residents gathered to watch 6 people drive toward almost certain doom. No speeches, no grand declarations, just quiet recognition that some people ran toward nightmares so others could run away. Daryl drove, Rick in passenger seat, Michonne, Aaron, Rosita, and Eugene in back. The vehicle pulled away from the convoy, heading northeast toward the source of the subsonic signal, toward the nest. Behind them, 200 survivors prepared to fight off 10,000 walkers with dwindling ammunition and desperate hope. Ahead, in forest that had reclaimed civilization, something older than the apocalypse waited. Something that had crossed the void between stars and ships humanity would never comprehend. Something that had crashed on a dead world and found it perfect. But because the dead didn't fight back, the dead just waited to be used. They found the nest 40 minutes later, not through Eugene's equipment, through smell. The forest reeked, not of rot, though that was present. Something else, chemical, biological, wrong. The scent of life that shouldn't exist, processing matter into forms that violated nature. Jesus, Aaron gagged, covering his mouth. What is that? Resin, Eugene said, checking his scanner. Some kind of secreted polymer. The creatures are using it to build structures. I'm reading thermal signatures consistent with... He stopped, staring at his screen. Oh, oh no. What? Rick demanded. Eugene turned the scanner so they could see. The thermal image showed a structure the size of a warehouse, built not from materials but from secreted resin, hardened into walls, chambers, corridors, and throughout it, heat signatures, dozens of them, not human, not walker, the creatures. That's not dozens, Michonne whispered. That's over 100. Rick, there are over 100 of those things in there. And more being born, Eugene added, highlighting different signatures. See these? Lower temperature, less movement. Those are incubators, hosts, maybe 50 of them, all in late-stage gestation. The mathematics crashed over them. 150 creatures, coordinated, intelligent, in a defensible structure, versus 6 people with rifles and improvised explosives. We can't fight that, Aaron said. Rick, this isn't a suicide mission. It's just suicide with extra steps. Then we don't fight, Rick replied. We burn, hit it from range, Molotov cocktails through the walls, force them out into the open where we have clear shots. They're intelligent, Rosita countered. They'll adapt. Send some to flank us while others protect the nest. We'd be fighting on multiple fronts. Then we make sure they can't protect the nest, Daryl said. He pulled out the map, marking positions. There, a natural choke point. If we channel them through that ravine, we force single-file engagement, limits their numbers advantage. And when they realize the trap and go around, Eugene asked. Then we blow the nest before they can return, Rick replied. Time the explosives for maximum structural damage. Make sure even if we don't kill all of them, we destroy their home. Force them to rebuild somewhere else. Buy time. Time for what? Michonne asked. Even if we destroy this nest, they'll just build another and another. They reproduce using walkers, an unlimited resource in a world full of dead. We can't kill them all. We can barely kill a few. Then we don't kill them all, Rick said. We kill enough to slow them down. We make them cautious. We prove they're not invincible. And we buy time for humanity to adapt, to learn, to build defenses against something we didn't know existed yesterday. He looked at his team, 5 people who'd followed him through impossible situations before and survived through luck, skill, and stubborn refusal to quit. I'm not ordering you to come, Rick said. This isn't a survival mission. This is a message. We're telling those things that humans don't surrender. We fight. And even when we can't win, we make winning cost them everything. Daryl chambered a bolt. Now let's go tell them. Aaron checked his rifle. For Alexandria. Rosita loaded her pistol. For the people we've lost. Eugene clutched his explosives. For statistical improbability becoming momentary probability. Michonne drew her katana. For our children. Rick pulled his python, the revolver that had been with him since the beginning, through every impossible fight, every hard choice, every moment when survival meant becoming something monstrous. For everyone who comes after us, Rick said. Let's make sure there's still a world for them to live in. They moved toward the nest, 6 people, against impossible odds, against creatures that used death itself as a weapon, against nightmares that had crossed the stars to consume humanity's corpse. But they moved forward anyway, because running was survival, and fighting was defiance. And sometimes defiance mattered more than survival. because surrender meant the end of everything, and even facing extinction. Humanity had never learned how to quit. The nest looked like a cathedral built by something that had never seen God. Resin walls rose 30 feet, organic and architectural simultaneously, spiraling columns that shouldn't support weight, but did. Chambers visible through translucent sections where movement suggested life that wasn't. Steam vented from openings that might have been design or damage, carrying that chemical biological stench that made breathing feel like contamination. Rick crouched behind fallen timber, 200 yards out, studying the structure through binoculars while his team positioned explosives. "Entry points?" he asked. "3 visible," Daryl replied from his position. "Main opening faces east, big enough for those things to move through freely. 2 smaller vents on the north and south sides. Could be exhaust, could be secondary access. Defenses? Don't see any. No sentries, no patrols. They're either overconfident or..." Daryl paused. "Oh, or they know we're here and don't consider us a threat," Rick finished. The thought sat heavy. 100 creatures inside, and they weren't bothering to guard against 6 humans with rifles. Either they were incompetent, or they were right not to worry. Eugene approached, hands shaking as he carried the last explosive device. Charges placed in 3 locations around the perimeter, shaped charges designed to collapse support structures. When they blow, the nest should experience catastrophic structural failure. "Should," Michonne repeated. "Will," Eugene corrected with false confidence. "Probably. 93% certainty given standard architectural load-bearing calculations, though admittedly those calculations assume conventional construction materials rather than alien bioresin, so..." "Eugene," Rick interrupted gently, "will it work?" Eugene met his eyes. "Yes, but even if we destroy the nest, the creatures inside will survive. We're not killing them. We're just making them homeless and extremely angry." "That's when we kill them," Daryl said, checking his crossbow. "They come running out. We funnel them through the choke point. We pick them off. Standard hunt tactics." "These aren't deer," Aaron observed. "They're intelligent. They'll adapt." "Then we adapt faster," Rick replied. He pulled out the detonator Eugene had rigged, a simple radio trigger with a red button that would end everything within 300 yards. "Rosita, Aaron, you're on the north exit. Anything comes out, you put it down. Daryl, south exit, same orders. Michonne and I take the main entrance. Eugene, you're on the detonator. When I give the signal, you blow it." "And if you're still inside when I give the signal?" Eugene asked. Rick didn't answer, didn't need to. They all understood the mathematics. "One more thing," Rick added. He pulled out a flare gun, salvaged from Alexandria's armory. "If this goes completely wrong, if we're overrun, if it becomes clear we can't win, I fire this. That's the signal for you to run. Get back to the convoy. Warn them what's coming. Don't stay to die with us." "We're not leaving you," Aaron said immediately. "You will if I order it," Rick countered, "because someone needs to survive this to tell people what we're fighting. Someone needs to warn the Commonwealth, Hilltop, every settlement that still exists. This isn't about us anymore. It's about making sure humanity knows what's out here before it's too late." The team absorbed this, the tacit admission that they were probably going to die, but that death might still serve purpose. 10 minutes, Rick said, checking his watch. We burn the nest at 0900 hours. Any questions? Rosita raised her hand. Yeah, what's our exit strategy? We run very fast and hope we're lucky, Rick replied. That's not a strategy. No, but it's honest. Rick looked at each person. Daryl, who'd been with him since the beginning. Michonne, who'd become his partner in all things. Aaron, Eugene, Rosita, people who'd chosen to follow a plan that would probably kill them because someone had to. Thank you, Rick said simply, for following me one more time, for trusting me when trust requires ignoring good sense, for being the kind of people who run toward nightmares instead of away from them. Someone has to, Daryl replied. Might as well be us. They moved to positions. Rick and Michonne approached the main entrance, weapons ready, moving with the practiced silence of people who'd survived a decade of walking among the dead. The nest's opening yawned before them, 10 feet wide, darkness beyond, steam venting like breath. You ready? Rick whispered. No, Michonne admitted, but let's do it anyway. They entered the nest. Inside was worse than outside. The walls breathed or seemed to pulsing slightly with internal pressure. Resin floors were sticky, adhesive, like the nest wanted to hold them. And the sound, not silence, but a low thrum that vibrated through bone, subsonic noise that made Rick's teeth ache. The chamber opened into a central cathedral space, and throughout it, hanging from walls and ceiling like obscene fruit, hosts, dozens of them, walkers cocooned in resin, bodies suspended in various stages of transformation. Some were just beginning, fresh corpses wrapped tight. Others were further along, chests bulging, movement visible beneath dead skin. A few were seconds from emergence, resin falling away as the creatures inside prepared to be born. Jesus Christ, Michonne whispered. This is a nursery. This is a factory, Rick corrected. They're processing walkers, turning the dead into more of themselves, creating an army. And throughout the cathedral, moving with liquid grace among the hanging hosts, the creatures, 20, 30, maybe more, sleek black forms tending the cocoons with almost parental care, secreting more resin, checking hosts, coordinating with silent communication. They hadn't noticed the humans yet, too focused on their work. Rick activated his radio, whisper quiet. Eugene, we're inside. Multiple hostiles. Recommend immediate detonation. Static. Then Eugene's voice, barely audible. Charges armed, on your signal. One of the creatures turned, looked directly at Rick, and shrieked. The cathedral exploded into motion. Creatures poured from walls, from shadows, from chambers Rick hadn't seen. Not 20, not 30, over 50. More than thermal imaging had shown, because the heat signatures had overlapped, because they'd been dormant, because they'd been waiting. Run! Rick shouted, firing his python at the nearest creature. The shot took it in the shoulder, spinning it backward. Dark fluid sprayed, but 3 more took its place, moving with predatory coordination. Cutting off the exit, Michonne's katana sang through the air, severing one creature's head cleanly. It fell, twitching, acid blood eating through resin floor. But 2 more lunged, forcing her back, separating her from Rick. "Rick!" she shouted, katana whirling in defensive patterns that held the creatures at bay. but couldn't create escape. Outside, gunfire erupted as Daryl and the others engaged creatures pouring from secondary exits. Rick heard Rosita's rifle, Aaron's shotgun, Eugene's panicked voice over radio. "They're everywhere, we can't hold..." A creature dropped from the ceiling, landing between Rick and the exit. Rick fired, missed. The thing lunged, claws extended, inner jaw shooting out. Daryl's crossbow bolt took it through the skull from behind. The creature collapsed and Daryl emerged from shadow, reloading with mechanical precision. "We gotta go," Daryl shouted. "Now!" "Michonne!" Rick turned, but she was 30 feet away, surrounded, fighting desperately against 4 creatures that had learned to coordinate attacks, to feint, to exploit openings. She was going to die. They were all going to die. Rick made the decision in half a second. "Eugene, blow it!" "But you're still inside." "Blow it now!" Static, hesitation, then, "God forgive me." The charges detonated. The world became fire and falling. The nest's support structures exploded, resin walls fragmenting, a ceiling collapsing in sections that crushed creatures and humans with democratic violence. Rick felt the floor drop, felt himself falling, slammed into something that might have been wall or floor or dying creature. Pain, darkness, then light. Sunshine through collapsed ceiling, smoke, the chemical smell mixing with burning resin. Rick tried to move, couldn't. Something heavy pinned his legs. He looked down, saw a section of nest wall across his lower body too heavy to lift, the edges sharp enough to cut. Around him, the cathedral had become a graveyard. Creatures lay broken, some dead, some dying, a few still moving with damaged bodies that leaked acid. Hosts hung from intact wall sections, their cocoons ruptured, the things inside them dead before birth. "Michonne," Rick gasped, trying to see through smoke. "Here." Her voice weak from his right. He turned his head, agony in his neck, and saw her, pinned beneath fallen resin, her katana just out of reach. Blood on her face from a cut that looked worse than it probably was. "Daryl?" Rick called. No answer. "Eugene? Rosita? Aaron?" Silence. Then, outside the collapsed nest, gunfire. Scattered, desperate, someone was still fighting. "Eugene," Rick tried the radio. Static. "Eugene, report." Crackling. Then Eugene's voice, broken. "Rick, Daryl's down, breathing but unconscious. Aaron's gone. Creature got him during the collapse. Rosita and I are holding position, but there's too many. They're regrouping, maybe 20 still active. We can't hold them." Rick tried to move. Couldn't. The wall section had him completely pinned. He could feel his legs. A good sign, meant the spine was intact, but couldn't generate leverage to free himself. "Eugene," Rick said, voice steady despite the situation. "Take Daryl, get to the vehicle, get out." "Not without you. That's an order." "With all due respect, Rick..." Eugene's voice cracked. "You're not my commander, you're my friend. And I don't leave friends." A shadow fell across Rick. He looked up. A creature stood over him, undamaged, eyeless head tilted, as if studying prey that couldn't escape. Its tail rose, barbed tip dripping acid, positioned above Rick's chest. One strike, that's all it would take. Rick raised his python, 5 rounds left, point-blank range. The creature's tail whipped down. Michonne's katana took it off at the base. The creature shrieked, spinning to face this new threat. Michonne had freed herself somehow, stood bleeding and swaying but armed, blade ready. "You want him?" she said, voice deadly calm. "Go through me." The creature lunged. Michonne moved, beautiful, practiced, the kata she'd learned from apocalypse warfare refined to art. The katana sang through air, through exoskeleton, through impossible biology. The creature fell in pieces, acid blood spraying across collapsed walls. But Michonne fell too. Exhaustion, blood loss. The fight draining the last of her strength. She hit the ground hard, katana clattering away. Rick strained against the wall, pinning him. "Michonne!" She didn't move, and from the smoke, from the shadows, from the parts of the nest that hadn't collapsed, more creatures emerged, 10 of them, undamaged, coordinated, moving toward Rick and Michonne with the patient certainty of predators who knew their prey couldn't escape. Rick fired his python, dropped one creature, fired again, missed. 3 shots left, 10 creatures, Michonne unconscious, himself pinned, the others fighting for survival outside. This was it, the end. Not with victory, not with heroic sacrifice, just with mathematics that didn't care about courage. Rick raised his pistol for one final shot. Gunfire erupted from the collapsed ceiling. Automatic weapons, military grade, coordinated volleys that cut through creatures with precision that spoke of training Rick's group had never possessed. The figures dropped through the ceiling opening, armed, armored, moving with tactical efficiency. They formed a perimeter around Rick and Michonne, weapons trained outward, cutting down creatures with disciplined fire. "Hold fire!" a voice commanded. "Civilian casualties present, verified targets before engaging." Rick stared through pain and smoke at soldiers who shouldn't exist. Commonwealth armor, professional military, real, organized, effective resistance. One soldier approached Rick, unchecking his vitals with practiced hands. "Sir, can you hear me? Are you infected?" "No," Rick managed. "My wife, Michonne, already being attended to. Sir, we need to extract you. This is going to hurt." The soldier signaled. 2 others came forward with equipment. They lifted the wall section with hydraulic assistance, freeing Rick's legs. Pain screamed through crushed tissue as blood flow returned. "Medic," the soldier called. Another approached with real medical supplies, real training, real hope. "How?" Rick gasped. "How are you here?" "We received your broadcast. Emergency transmission from Alexandria. The Commonwealth deployed rapid response." The soldier helped secure Rick to a stretcher. "Sir, you need to stay calm. We're getting you out, all of you." "My team being evacuated now. 1 KIA, 2 wounded, 2 ambulatory. We've got them." "Aaron dead." The words barely registered through shock. They carried Rick out of the collapsed nest, through smoke that tasted like burning nightmares into sunlight that hurt eyes adjusted to darkness. Outside, Commonwealth troops had established a perimeter. Eugene and Rosita were being treated for minor wounds. Daryl lay unconscious but breathing, and beyond the military cordon, a convoy, real military vehicles, armed personnel carriers, helicopter in the distance incoming for medical evacuation. The Commonwealth had responded with force, with resources, with hope. But as they loaded Rick into the medical vehicle, as he watched the collapsed nest still burning, he saw movement in the forest beyond. Creatures, maybe a dozen, watching from shadow, not attacking, just observing, learning, understanding that humanity had allies, that the fight had escalated, that this was no longer about one nest in one forest. This was war, and the creatures, patient, intelligent, adaptive, were learning how to fight it. Rick tried to speak, to warn the soldiers, but pain and blood loss dragged him toward unconsciousness. His last thought before darkness: we won the battle, but the war just started. Rick woke in a hospital bed that shouldn't exist. Clean sheets, sterile smell, IV drip feeding antibiotics into his arm, fluorescent lights humming overhead with the steady electricity of civilization that had supposedly died 15 years ago. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then pain reminded him. His legs, crushed beneath resin walls, now splinted and bandaged with professional medical care. His ribs, cracked during the collapse, wrapped tight. His hands, a cut from crawling through wreckage, cleaned and stitched. He was alive. The door opened. A woman in Commonwealth military uniform entered. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair pulled back, insignia marking her as Colonel. She carried a tablet and the expression of someone delivering news that couldn't wait for pleasantries. "Mr. Grimes," she said, pulling up a chair. "I'm Colonel Rene Vasquez, Commonwealth Military Operations. How are you feeling?" "Like I got crushed by an alien nest," Rick replied. "How's my team?" "Daryl Dixon is awake, minor concussion, full recovery expected. Michonne," Vasquez paused, consulting her tablet. "Required surgery for internal bleeding. She's stable now, sleeping. Prognosis good. Eugene Porter and Rosita Espinosa treated and released with minor injuries." "And Aaron?" Vasquez's expression softened. "KIA during nest collapse. I'm sorry, his body's been recovered. We'll arrange transport to wherever you'd like him buried." Rick closed his eyes. Aaron, gentle Aaron, who'd recruited people instead of killing them, who'd believed humans could be better than their worst impulses, dead because Rick had led them into a suicide mission. "The others," Rick said, "the convoy, 200 people we left 15 miles from Alexandria. Secured and evacuated to Commonwealth territory. They're safe. Your daughter Judith has been asking about you constantly. We can arrange a call when you're ready." Relief crashed over Rick, then guilt. Relief that Judith was safe. Guilt that he'd risked never seeing her again. "The creatures," Rick said. "The nest, what's the status?" Vasquez's expression hardened. "Nest destroyed. Confirmed 53 creature casualties, but Rick," she used his first name deliberately, "we estimate 12 to 15 escaped. Thermal tracking shows them dispersing in different directions. And we've received reports from other settlements. Similar attacks, different locations. These things aren't operating as a single hive. They're spreading." "How many nests?" "Unknown. Minimum 3 confirmed, maybe 5 suspected. And that's just within our scanning range. If they've spread beyond that." She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Rick understood the implication. The invasion they'd stopped at Alexandria was just one front in a war that had already gone regional. "What's Commonwealth response?" Rick asked. "Full military deployment. Governor Milton has authorized emergency protocols. We're evacuating isolated settlements, consolidating populations into defendable positions, establishing kill zones around confirmed nest sites. But Rick, Vasquez leaned forward, we need your expertise. You've fought these things up close, survived direct contact, developed tactics. The Commonwealth has numbers and equipment, but you have experience we can't replicate. You want me to help you fight them. I want you to help us survive them. Vasquez activated her tablet, showing reports from across the region. These creatures are intelligent. They're learning our tactics faster than we're learning theirs. Every engagement teaches them something new. They're adapting. And if we don't adapt faster, if we don't develop counter strategies before they establish real foothold. She stopped. Rick finished for her. Then the apocalypse gets a new predator, one that turns the dead into weapons, one that humanity can't outlast through attrition. Exactly. Rick stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of command settling back over him. He'd tried to escape it, tried to just survive, protect his family, build small communities in Dead World's ruins. But the universe kept demanding more, kept demanding leaders, kept demanding people willing to make impossible choices. Yeah, I'll help, Rick said. But I need guarantees. My people, everyone from Alexandria, they get full Commonwealth citizenship, protection, resources, no second-class treatment because they're refugees. Already approved, Vasquez replied. Governor Milton specifically authorized full integration. Your people saved lives, warning us about this threat. We don't abandon allies. And when this is over, when we've killed these things or died trying, my family gets to stay, build lives, not get drafted into the next crisis. Vasquez hesitated. I can't promise there won't be another crisis, but I can promise the Commonwealth will honor your service. Your family will have homes. Judith and RJ will have education, healthcare, futures. Whether you survive this or not, they're protected. It was the best offer Rick had heard in 15 years, maybe the only offer that mattered. Then let's talk strategy, Rick said. The war room was something from pre-apocalypse military fiction, digital maps, satellite feeds that shouldn't work, real-time thermal imaging across hundreds of miles. 50 people, military officers, scientists, experienced survivors, gathered to plan humanity's response to invasion from the stars. Rick stood at the center, leaning on a cane, addressing the assembled command with authority earned through surviving impossible situations. The creatures have 3 advantages, Rick began, pointing at the display showing confirmed nest locations. First, reproduction. They use walkers, unlimited resource in our world. Every corpse is potential soldier in their army. We can't match their production. Murmurs of agreement. Second, intelligence. They learn, adapt, coordinate. They're not animals. They're apex predators with strategic thinking. Maybe not human level, but close enough. More murmurs, darker now. Third, biology. They're built for killing. Acid blood. Exoskeletons that resist small arms. Speed and strength beyond human capacity. In direct combat, 1 creature equals maybe 5 trained soldiers. So we're outmatched in every category, a Commonwealth general said. Production, intelligence, individual combat effectiveness. How do we win? We don't fight their war, Rick replied. We make them fight ours. They're adapted for close quarters combat, ambush predation, using confined spaces. So we deny them that. We fight in open terrain. long-range engagement. Make them cross kill zones where we have overlapping fields of fire. Daryl entered the war room, bandaged but mobile. And when they adapt, when they learn to avoid kill zones, then we adapt faster, Rick said. That's the only advantage we have, numbers. We can afford losses they can't. Every creature we kill is gone. They need hosts to replace casualties. So we eliminate hosts, burn walker herds, deny them raw material. That's easier said than done, Eugene observed from his position near the technical displays. Walker populations number in millions across the region. We can't eliminate them all before the creatures convert significant numbers. We don't eliminate all walkers. Michonne's voice cut through the room. She entered on crutches against medical advice, determination overriding physician orders. We eliminate access. We create dead zones, literally. Areas cleared of all walkers, all potential hosts. Force the creatures to operate in regions where we control the supply. A Commonwealth scientist spoke up. That's resource-intensive. The manpower required to clear and maintain walker-free zones is less than the manpower required to fight unlimited creatures, Michonne interrupted. We're fighting a war of resources. They need walkers. We need to deny them walkers. Everything else is tactical detail. Rick watched Michonne with pride and concern. Pride that she'd survived. Concern that she was pushing herself too hard too soon. But he knew that look. She wasn't going to rest while the fight continued. There's another factor, Vasquez added. The nests themselves. They're not random. We've analyzed locations. They're positioning themselves near major population centers. Alexandria, Hilltop, Oceanside, even probing Commonwealth borders. This isn't random expansion, it's strategic encirclement. They're cutting us off, Rick realized. Isolating settlements, building networks that prevent alliance. If we can't coordinate between communities, then they defeat us piecemeal, Vasquez finished. Which is why Governor Milton authorized Operation Sanctuary. We're consolidating populations, abandoning indefensible settlements, creating fortress cities with resources to withstand siege, and linking them through secured supply routes. You're giving up territory, Daryl observed. We're choosing battlefields, Vasquez corrected. The creatures want us spread thin. We're concentrating, making them come to us on terrain we've fortified. And the people in the settlements you're abandoning. Gabriel's voice carried accusation. He'd entered quietly, priest's collar visible beneath civilian clothes. You're asking them to leave their homes, everything they've built. I'm asking them to survive, Vasquez replied without apology. Homes can be rebuilt. Dead can't be resurrected. We consolidate now. We establish defensible positions. And when we've eliminated the threat, if we eliminate the threat, people can return. If, Gabriel repeated. You don't believe we can win. I believe we can survive, Vasquez said. The winning and surviving aren't always the same thing. The room absorbed this, the tacit admission that best-case scenario might not include victory, just endurance. Then we endure, Rick said. Same thing we've done for 15 years. We adapt. We survive. We outlast enemies who think biology makes them superior, and we prove that intelligence, coordination, and refusal to quit beats perfect predation. He looked around the room. Soldiers who'd never faced this threat. Survivors who'd barely escaped it. Scientists trying to understand biology that violated natural law. The creatures have advantages, Rick continued, but they don't have what we have. The ability to communicate across settlements, to share tactics, to learn from each other's mistakes. They're smart, but they're isolated. Each nest operates independently. We can exploit that. Hit them simultaneously across multiple locations. Force them to defend everywhere. Concentrate nowhere. Coordinated strike, Vasquez said, understanding immediately. We identify all nest locations, assemble strike teams, hit them at the same moment. Even if individual attacks fail, the creatures can't support each other, can't consolidate forces. Exactly, Rick confirmed. And we don't need total success. We just need to hurt them badly enough that reproduction can't keep pace with casualties. Force them into strategic retreat. Give humanity time to fortify, adapt, develop better countermeasures. Eugene pulled up tactical projections. Based on current intelligence, we have confirmed locations for 5 nests, suspected locations for 3 more. Simultaneous assault would require 8 strike teams, significant ordnance, and acceptance of high casualty rates. How high? Vasquez asked. 40 to 60%, Eugene said quietly. These are hardened targets defended by creatures that killed experienced fighters, even with Commonwealth military support. We're looking at losses that are acceptable if the alternative is extinction, Rick interrupted. Colonel Vasquez, can Commonwealth provide the resources? Vasquez consulted her tablet, running calculations. We can field 8 teams, provide air support where terrain allows, supply heavy weapons, explosives, tactical coordination. But Rick, we're talking about deploying significant portions of our military into simultaneous high-risk operations. If this fails, we've learned what doesn't work and we try something else, Rick said. But if we don't try, if we just consolidate and defend, we're giving the creatures time to establish themselves, time to learn, time to grow. Better to hit them now when they're still vulnerable than wait until they're entrenched. The room fell silent as command staff absorbed the proposal. Finally, Vasquez spoke. I'll recommend this to Governor Milton, but I need honesty. What are our actual chances? Rick met her eyes. Unknown. We're fighting something we've never encountered. Biology we don't understand. Intelligence we can't predict. But Colonel, his voice steadied with certainty, earned through impossible survival. I've led people through situations where survival was statistically impossible. We're still here, not because of superior force, because of superior will. These creatures are perfect predators, but they've never fought prey that refuses to accept predation. That's not strategy, Vasquez observed. That's philosophy. Philosophy is all we've got when the math says we should be dead, Rick replied, and it's kept us alive for 15 years. Vasquez studied Rick for a long moment, then nodded. I'll present your plan to the governor. Expect authorization within 24 hours. She paused. And Rick, thank you for warning us, for fighting. For being the kind of person who runs toward nightmares instead of away from them. Someone has to, Rick said, echoing Daryl's words from a lifetime ago. The meeting adjourned. Command staff dispersed to prepare for war against enemy that shouldn't exist. Rick stood alone in the war room, staring at the map showing nest locations, walker herds, human settlements caught between. Michonne approached, moving carefully on crutches. "You're planning to lead one of the strike teams." Not a question, an observation. "Yes," Rick confirmed. "Rick, you're injured. You can barely walk. The doctors said weeks of recovery before—" "I don't have weeks," Rick interrupted. "None of us do. The creatures are spreading, learning. Every day we wait, they get stronger. I can't ask people to risk their lives on a plan I'm not willing to execute myself." "You've already risked your life, already bled, already lost people." Michonne's voice carried pain and anger and love. "At what point is it enough? At what point do you let someone else carry the weight?" "When the weight stops mattering," Rick replied. "When there's no one left to protect. When survival stops being worth the cost." He turned to face her. "Michonne, I know what I'm asking. I know what this looks like. Another suicide mission, another gamble with lives I can't afford to lose. But if we don't stop these things now—" "I know," Michonne interrupted. "I understand the stakes. I'm coming with you." "You can barely walk." "Neither can you." She smiled without humor. "We'll be slow together. Make up for it with experience." Rick wanted to argue, wanted to protect her, send her somewhere safe, spare her the horror of what was coming. But he knew that look, knew that determination, knew that some people couldn't be protected because protection meant taking away their choice. Together, Rick agreed. They stood in the war room, two survivors of impossible apocalypse, a planning assault on enemy from the stars. Outside, Commonwealth mobilized for war. In forests across the region, creatures learned and grew and prepared. And somewhere between human defiance and alien hunger, the future waited, uncertain, bloody, but not yet written. 3 days later, 8 strike teams deployed simultaneously across 200 miles of reclaimed wilderness. Rick led Team Alpha, 12 Commonwealth soldiers, Daryl, Michonne, and Rosita. Their target, the largest confirmed nest, a structure built inside an abandoned factory that thermal imaging showed housed over 80 creatures. The helicopter dropped them 2 miles out at dawn. Rick's legs still ached, but adrenaline and necessity made pain irrelevant. Beside him, Michonne moved with controlled determination, katana strapped across her back despite medical advice against combat. "Radio check," Colonel Vasquez's voice crackled through their comms from tactical command. "All teams report status." 7 confirmations came through. Team Bravo at the coastal nest, Team Charlie in the mountains, Teams Delta through hotel spread across the region, each positioned to strike confirmed or suspected hive locations. "This is Alpha," Rick replied, "in position, a beginning approach. All teams, you are go for assault. Synchronized strike in T-10 minutes, good hunting." The line went silent. Rick looked at his team, soldiers who'd trained for conventional warfare, now facing biology that violated everything they'd learned. He saw fear in their eyes, saw it and saw them controlling it, choosing to fight anyway. "Listen to me," Rick said quietly. "What we're about to face, it's going to be fast, brutal, and terrifying. These things are built to kill. But they're not invincible. They bleed, they die. We've proven that. So we go in hard, we burn everything. and we come out together. Understood?" "Sir," one soldier, couldn't have been older than 25, spoke up. "Is it true that these things came from space? That they're aliens?" Rick met the kid's eyes. "Honestly, we don't know. Maybe they're from space. Maybe they're bioweapons from before the fall. Maybe they're something that evolved in the dead world when we weren't looking. Doesn't matter. What matters is they're here, they're killing us, and we're going to stop them." "And if we can't?" another soldier asked. "Then we hurt them badly enough that the next team can," Daryl replied, checking his crossbow with mechanical precision. "Ain't about winning every fight. It's about making sure the enemy loses eventually." The factory came into view through morning mist, rusted metal and shattered windows, nature reclaiming industrial bones. But the resin was visible even from distance. Organic material coating walls, filling gaps, transforming human architecture into alien structure. Thermal shows concentrated signatures in the central manufacturing floor. Eugene's voice came through comms from tactical support. "Estimated 80 to 90 creatures, multiple hosts in late-stage gestation. Rick, I'm also detecting something else. Higher temperature signature, larger. Could be a different class of creature. Possibly a queen." "A queen?" Michonne asked. "Speculation based on insect analogs," Eugene admitted, "but the thermal profile is significantly different from standard creatures, larger, more complex internal structure, if they follow eusocial biology patterns." "English, Eugene," Rick interrupted. "There might be a bigger one," Eugene simplified. "Much bigger, and it might be controlling the others." Rick processed this. Every nest they'd found had shown coordinated behavior, strategic thinking beyond individual predator capacity. If that coordination came from a central intelligence, a queen directing drones, then killing it might collapse the entire hive. Or it might make the drones more desperate, more aggressive, less predictable. "New objective," Rick said. "We find that queen, we kill it first. Decapitate the hive." That's a significant tactical deviation from the plan. A Commonwealth lieutenant started. "The plan just changed," Rick interrupted. "We go in. I locate the queen, eliminate it, then burn everything." "Questions?" Silence. "T-2 minutes," Vasquez's voice announced. "All teams prepare for simultaneous breach." They moved to the factory entrance. Massive loading dock doors welded shut with resin. Daryl placed shaped charges, enough explosive to blow the doors inward and announce their arrival with maximum violence. 1 minute. Rick chambered around in his rifle, checked his python, still with him after all these years. He threw every impossible fight. The revolver felt right, familiar, a piece of who he'd been before the world ended. 30 seconds. Around him, the team readied weapons. Michonne drew her katana, the blade catching morning light. Rosita checked her rifle's magazine for the 3rd time, nervous habit that Rick recognized as pre-combat ritual. 10 seconds. Rick activated his comm. "Judith, if you're listening to tactical channels like I know you are, stay with the others. Stay safe. And know that everything I'm about to do, I'm doing so you never have to." Silence, then barely audible. "I know, Dad. Come home." "I will," Rick lied. "I promise." "Breach, breach, breach!" Daryl triggered the explosives. The loading dock doors exploded inward in a wave of fire and shrapnel. The team poured through, weapons hot, moving with practiced coordination into the factory's transformed interior. The manufacturing floor had become cathedral. 50-foot ceilings draped with resin, with suspended hosts hanging like grotesque ornaments, and everywhere, moving with fluid menace, the creatures. They'd been waiting, not surprised by the assault, prepared for it. The creatures hit the team with coordinated fury, attacking from walls, from ceiling, from beneath machinery, moving with tactical precision that spoke of intelligence planning ambush. Gunfire erupted. Commonwealth soldiers laid down, suppressing fire, falling back into defensive formation. Creatures fell, chest shots, headshots, the lethal precision of trained marksmen. But for every creature that died, 2 more appeared. "Fall back," the lieutenant shouted. "We're outnumbered. Recommend immediate withdrawal." "Negative," Rick roared. "Push through. Find the Queen." He ran deeper into the factory, rifle firing, dropping creatures that lunged from shadow. Beside him, Michonne's katana became a blur of steel and violence, severing limbs, heads, tails that whipped through air. Daryl covered their flank, a crossbow and rifle working in deadly rotation. Rosita moved with tactical precision, putting down creatures that tried to circle behind. And throughout it all, Rick felt it, the sense of wrongness, of presence that filled the space like pressure, something massive, something waiting. They found it in the central chamber, the Queen. It was 15 feet tall, grotesquely beautiful in its alien horror. 4 arms instead of 2, a crown of bone protrusions from its elongated skull, and covering its massive form, egg sacs, dozens of them, pulsing, ready to release facehuggers that would create more hosts, more creatures, more nightmares. The Queen looked at Rick with eyeless perception and shrieked, a sound that made the metal glass screams of drones seem like whispers. A sound that called every creature in the factory to defend their mother. "Light it up," Rick shouted. The team opened fire with everything. Rifles, shotguns, the incendiary rounds they'd saved for this moment. Bullets tore through the Queen's massive form, dark fluid spraying, egg sacs rupturing. But the Queen didn't fall. It charged. 15 feet of alien fury moving with speed that defied its mass. 4 arms reaching, tail whipping, inner jaw extending toward Rick's face. Michonne's katana took 1 arm off at the shoulder. Daryl's explosive bolt detonated in its chest cavity. Rosita's incendiary rounds ignited the leaking biological fluids. The Queen stumbled, burning, damaged but not dead. It swept 1 massive arm, catching 2 Commonwealth soldiers and sending them flying into resin walls, hard enough to break bones. Rick emptied his rifle into its skull. The python came out. 6 shots, point-blank range. Each one placed with the precision of someone who'd been killing impossible things for 15 years. The 5th shot punched through the Queen's skull, into whatever served as its brain. The creature went still, swayed, fell like a collapsing building, hitting the factory floor with impact that shook the structure. "Burn it," Rick ordered. "Burn everything." They scattered incendiary charges throughout the chamber, on the Queen's corpse, on the egg sacs, on the resin walls, then ran. Behind them, the factory erupted in flames. They emerged into daylight, smoke pouring from every opening, the nest consuming itself in chemical fire. Alpha team to tactical, Rick gasped into his radio. Queen neutralized. Nest burning. What's the status of other teams? Static. Then Vasquez's voice carrying strain. Mixed results. Bravo team successful. Moderate casualties. Charlie team. We lost contact 20 minutes ago. Delta through hotel reporting varying success rates. Overall casualty estimate 53%. More than half the assault force, dead or missing. Rick closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing him again. 53 people dead because he'd ordered simultaneous assault. Because he'd believed aggressive strategy was better than cautious defense. But Rick, Vasquez continued, voice strengthening, thermal imaging shows nest activity dropping across the board. The hives are collapsing, creatures dispersing. Whatever you did, killing the queens, it worked. The coordination is breaking down. Rick looked at the burning factory, at the creatures fleeing into the forest. No longer coordinated, no longer strategic, just animals running from fire. It's not over, Rick said. They'll regroup, build new nests, learn from this. Then we hit them again, Vasquez replied. Harder, smarter. We keep hitting them until they're extinct or they learn humanity isn't prey. Colonel, Rick's voice carried exhaustion that went beyond physical. This is a war we can't win, not permanently. These things reproduce using walkers. We can't eliminate every walker, can't guard every corpse. They'll always have raw material for rebuilding. Then we don't try to win, Vasquez said quietly. We try to survive, create equilibrium, make the cost of attacking us higher than the benefit, force them to hunt elsewhere. That's not victory, but it's survival, and survival is all we've ever had. Rick looked at his team, Michonne wounded but alive, Daryl bloodied but standing, Rosita checking casualties with professional detachment. Soldiers who'd followed him into hell and emerged with victory that felt like defeat. Extraction inbound, Vasquez announced. You did good, Rick. You all did. Get some rest. We'll debrief when you're back. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, descending toward makeshift LZ. As they loaded casualties, as the medics worked on wounded, as the factory burned behind them, Rick felt Michonne's hand find his. We survived, she said quietly. Again, Rick replied. How many more times before we run out of luck? As many times as it takes. Michonne's grip tightened. That's all survival is. Outlasting the universe's attempts to kill you. We're still here. Judith's safe. RJ's safe. Alexandria's people are safe. That's not nothing. It's not enough, Rick said. It never is, Michonne agreed. But it's what we've got. The helicopter lifted, carrying survivors away from burning nest. Away from battlefield where 53 people had died buying humanity temporary reprieve. Below, the forest stretched endlessly, full of walkers, full of creatures, full of threats that would never stop coming, but also full of settlements, full of people fighting to survive, full of communities building futures in apocalypse's ruins. The war against the creatures would continue, would evolve, would claim more lives before any kind of equilibrium emerged. But humanity had survived the dead, had adapted to apocalypse, had learned to thrive in ruins, and now facing invasion from beyond understanding, facing predators built by evolution or designed to be perfect killers, humanity would learn to survive that too, not through superiority, not through inevitable victory, but through stubborn, relentless, exhausting refusal to accept extinction. One battle at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one impossible survival at a time. Until the universe learned what 15 years of apocalypse had taught the dead, humanity didn't quit, didn't surrender, didn't stop fighting, even when the math said they should, even when survival cost everything, even when victory looked like just another form of losing. Because in the end, survival wasn't about winning, it was about outlasting, and humanity had 15 years of practice outlasting nightmares. These new nightmares? Just another challenge, another adaptation, another chapter in the endless story of people who refused to die quietly. Rick leaned back in the helicopter, watching the burning nest disappear into distance. Thought about Judith and RJ waiting for him in Commonwealth safety. Thought about the 53 who died so they could stay safe. Thought about the creatures still out there, learning, adapting, preparing for the next encounter. And despite everything, despite the losses, despite the impossible odds, despite knowing the war would never truly end, Rick smiled, because he was still here, still fighting, still choosing survival over surrender. And that choice, however costly, however painful, however uncertain, was the only real victory apocalypse allowed. The helicopter carried them toward uncertain future. Behind them, smoke rose like signal fire. Ahead, Commonwealth walls promised temporary safety. And everywhere between, the war continued forever. Because some wars don't end with victory. They end when you stop fighting, and humanity never learned how to quit. 6 months later, the Commonwealth had established 12 fortress cities across the region. Walker populations were systematically reduced through coordinated burns. Creature nests were identified and destroyed before they could mature. The invasion slowed, not stopped, never stopped, but slowed to manageable threat. Rick stood on Commonwealth walls, watching sunset paint the sky the color of burning nests. Judith found him there, now 9 years old, carrying the python he'd given her. "Dad," she said, "Mr. Eugene says the creatures are learning to avoid our patrols, adapting their breeding patterns, becoming nocturnal." "They're smart," Rick replied. "Smarter than walkers. We'll have to be smarter still. Will we ever kill them all?" Rick looked at his daughter, too young to carry such questions, too experienced to be sheltered from truth. "Probably not," he admitted. "But we'll learn to live alongside them, make their hunting grounds smaller, their victories more expensive, force them to recognize humanity as threat, not prey. That's not the ending story's promise, but it's the ending survival allows." Judith absorbed this. Then, "Sounds lonely, fighting forever." "It is," Rick said, "but you're not alone. None of us are. We fight together, survive together, build futures together. And maybe someday, long after we're gone, the people we're protecting will find actual peace, actual safety, actual victory." "You believe that?" "I have to," Rick replied, "because the alternative is accepting that all this suffering is meaningless, and I refuse to believe that." Judith slipped her small hand into his. Together they watched the sun set on a world that had ended and kept ending and would never stop ending, but also kept surviving, kept adapting, kept refusing to quit. Because that's what humanity did. Not through destiny, not through superiority, just through stubborn, relentless, impossible choice to survive one more day. Even when survival was the hardest thing in the universe, especially then.